Hi, I'm Alysa Revell, Executive Director here at Bountiful Davis Art Center. Hex the Art Dog and I would like to welcome you to the 5th and final installment of Summerfest 2020, Conversations in Culture. Tonight, we'll be taking a closer look at South Sudan with our friend Dominic Raimondo. Before we begin, I would like to thank our major sponsors for their help, Bountiful City and Davis County Tourism and Events. And if you would like to support Summerfest or Bountiful Davis Art Center, just become a member. Go to our website at bdac.org. To get us started tonight, I'd like to tell you a little bit about South Sudan. South Sudan is located on the continent of Africa. It is a landlocked country surrounded by Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Central African Republic, and Chad. This area of the world has been colonized, and by 1900, it was an Anglo-Egyptian state, one in which Christian missionaries converted much of the population and facilitated the spread of English rather than Arabic. When Sudan gained its independence in 1956, it was with the understanding that the Southerners would be able to participate fully in the political system. When those rights were not granted, that led to two prolonged periods of conflict, 1955 to 1972 and 1983 to 2005, in which an estimated 2.5 million people died, mostly civilians, due to starvation and drought. Ongoing peace talks finally resulted in a comprehensive peace agreement signed in January of 2005. The result of this referendum, held in January 2011, was a vote of 98% in favor of secession. Since independence on July 9, 2011, South Sudan has struggled with good governance and nation building due to bilateral disagreements with Sudan. Conflicts continue despite attempts at peace agreements. Almost 2 million South Sudanese have sought refuge in neighboring countries since the current conflict began in December of 2013. Another 1.6 million South Sudanese are internally displaced as of August 2017. More than 240,000 people have fled to South Sudan to escape fighting in Sudan. Currently, there are more than 10,500,000 people in the country today. Now, to get us started, please welcome our Summerfest coordinator, James Bates, and our friend, Dominic Raimondo.
Dominic Raimondo is a current resident of Utah and has lived here since he was 19. He is a member of the Didinga tribe from the village of Ludo, located in southern area of South Sudan. At the age of 6, he was forced to flee his home village and travel to a refugee camp. He eventually had the opportunity to become a U.S. citizen. Tonight, we're going to talk about his journey to where he is today. He also has multiple philanthropy projects that he is working on, and we are going to discuss about how you can become involved. With many South Sudanese living outside of the country, the independence was celebrated around the world, including here in Utah. Dominic, were you able to celebrate, and how did you and the community celebrate the independence?
That's a good question. It was a long-awaited thing for us after so many years of struggle, and having that independent was a last option. And we were very grateful and thankful for our community partners all over the United States and all over the world for supporting this independent. As in Salt Lake here, we celebrated in a very big way. All the women cook food. We prepare our traditional dances. You know, it was just a powerful thing that we never got in our life. So it was a big thing that we celebrated right here in Salt Lake, and the host community here joined us as well. We were very happy, and our people back in the villages and in small towns in South Sudan around the world celebrated the independence as well, and it was very, very powerful. However, unfortunately, after 2 years of our independence, our country went in a very, different direction that we did not anticipate it. And that's when the leaders in our country started engaging in who will be the next, leader of the country after 3 years or 5 years, and they disagree. The others rebelled, and everybody started, distrusting each other, and that's what started happening. And everybody have to again leave their homes and villages, and ended up in the refugee camp, joining those who never went back when the war started in the beginning.
So, Dominic, your home village is Luro in the southern region of South Sudan. What do you remember about your village when you were a child? And I know that you were pretty young before you left, so tell us what you can.
My reflection of my life in Luro village was very interesting and very fun. I always think about and have that homesick of that. When I was a young kid in the village, I remember very well, we had fun. It was fun because every morning we wanted to become like our parents who used to take care of the really cows. What we then did was that we collected the clay in the river every morning, and we go into the open field and started molding the clay cows. So we were imitating our parents who really took care of the cows. So when we reached a certain age, we wanted to then be ready and take care of the really cows. But unfortunately, things never went that way. However, even not to go on that side first, I remember a lot of stuff. Apart from taking care of the cows, I remember I used to go with my friends to the traditional dances occasions with my friends and watch how our parents used to dance and watch how they sing and watch how they do things. Although there were some dances that we were not allowed to go because it was dangerous for the kids. Especially, for example, the dance that we were not allowed to go was the warriors, traditional dance where the warriors return from raiding the cows from other tribes, and they come back home with the cows, and they show that toughness. And they usually have their arrows and spears, and they could dance with pride and power. And therefore, if you are around as a kid, sometimes you can be knocked down.
You might lose an eye.
Oh, yes. And so, therefore, it was such kind of, traditional dance occasions we're not allowed to do. The other thing that I remember was, we had enough food. We used to go to a harvesting traditional dance day. That's where we have a lot of food, and everybody bring their food, drinks, and it was such an amazing time with families and everybody coming together, eating food, drinking some traditional made beer. And so I could just imagine and miss that moment so much. But that was not, it didn't last long. And when my village then attacked at night, we were all separated, with each other, and my family ran in different direction. I ran as well in different direction, and my neighbors also did the same thing. The cows that were in our village were shot. mercilessly by the rebels, and it was just a confusing, hard time where when I ran and escaped the village and went to the certain distance, I saw the smoke coming from our village on the sky, and I could hear the gunshot, and I was terrified and nervous and just stressed. I thought, I wish the rebels would not come and find me. However, I was just right there and saw some of my neighbors passing by, and I joined them. We started walking long distance, 3 days walk, 600 miles with my friends. And that was something that I wanted to, share as we engage on this conversation.
So your journey from your home village to the refugee camp was 600 miles, and where was that refugee camp located?
As you know, South Sudan and Kenya are neighbors. And my village is neighbor with Kenya. And that's when our village was attacked, we were able to see at night the lights from far distance when it's so dark. And so that's what guided us, to Kenya. And so when we left the village, we walked 600 miles on our way. I want to mention that we were attacked by the animals. My friends died because of hunger, some of them because of diseases, and I was fortunate enough that I was able to make it to the border between South Sudan and Kenya with some of my friends, where we were actually stopped by the police from Kenya side and taken to their headquarters and questioned. But we did not know any language to communicate with. But we were young and exhausted and tired. We did not have any food. So their boss came and knew what was going on in South Sudan, but he did not thought we were criminals. So he called the United Nations, and the United Nations came and rescued us. We were taken care of by United Nations. And that's when we were relocated to the refugee camp in further distance from the border between South Sudan and Kenya.
Okay. Along the way, who took care of you?
Good question. I was almost probably the youngest, and my neighbors were a little bit older than me. And so when I was tired, they were able to help me along the way. Otherwise, there was no way I could walk all those miles by myself. Although we walked during the night, because during the day, we were afraid of two things. Number one, enemies. We thought maybe those rebels will find us. Number two, it was too hot to walk during the daytime. And so we hide during the daytime and walk at night.
Okay. Could you describe the feelings that you had during this time?
Good question. Thank you. It was very stressful because I did not know whether my mom, dad, or siblings were still alive. Since we were, we separated and ran in different directions. And so it was very, very stressful and hard all the time. And so I could just say it was a hard time for me and my friends.
That sounds like something that would be very difficult to process as a 6-year-old.
Yes, it was. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. Some, even up to now, because I think what happened to someone, practically would always be there. Will never be erased.
So it will always be with you.
Yes.
So how long did you live in the camp that you were taken to?
When we were rescued by the United Nations, between the border of Sudan, South Sudan and Kenya. We were taken to the refugee camp, and we stayed there for 10 years.
10 years, wow.
Where we were never been happy, because always, like I said, we think of our parents, and we never have any conversation with them. We never have any telephone to call or email to read or something. We got disconnected for all these 10 years.
What was the setup of the camp like?
When we got there, the location where we were put was a place where no human being should be located in that place. The place, of course, was right in the center of Ecuador, where the sun hit so much. So the location was so dry, there's not enough water, there's no even grass. It was sand and dusty. Therefore, all the time, and when it rains, it's so muddy, and the water was stagnant, doesn't move. So living there was hard. Although it was peaceful, we could not hear any gunshot. But when we got sick, we did not have enough or good hospital to go to. We did not have education. We did not have school. Although we, learned ABCD under the tree for just a short period of time, we did not have enough food. That's one of the things. What we did was sometimes play this, soccer to keep us, happy and keep us going. And so, if I could describe how life in Kakuma refugee camp, where I spent 10 years, was tough in the beginning, because the United Nations was just, there in a very small, scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, was the Red Cross involved in this effort?
No, the Red Cross was based in the front line, on the in the country where the rebels and the government, fight, and so they were right, in the front line. They were not in the refugee camp. Although later on they came back, and put their small committee there to help people who comes into the refugee camp, because the number kept on increasing because of the situation that was taking place in South Sudan. And so it was as such a ongoing situation.
Really quick, when you were there, did you develop any mentors or adult figures that helped guide you?
No, because of all of 16,000 young men, young kids of my age were the one that the one that's in the refugee camp, and so all those kids, we became like brothers, because we most of the time spend time together, playing soccer together. Although we were all from different tribes, what happened when I left the village, rebels went on to different villages and did the same thing. So those young men with the energy, they were able to escape and just leave the village, because it was, they were targeted most of the time. Yeah.
So, Dominic, next I want to talk about your journey from the refugee camp that you spent 10 years in to your journey to the United States.
Thank you. The opportunity after 10 years in the refugee camp was something that I could not believe that one day it was going to happen. When the United States government, the United States bishops, and the United Nations told us that we are going to give you the opportunity to go to United States and restart your life again, was something that was so exciting. However, it was not just that, like, come and go. We were asked questions. We were interviewed, for example, what will you go and do when you reach the United States? And so, because many of us did not speak English, we had interpreters who interpreted us the interview. And so we started with the interviews, and then the second process was, if you pass the first interview, then you'll be invited to the second interview. And that is, prepare you for the third interview, when you will then be given the opportunity to go to do the medical checkup. And so when you do the medical checkup, then you will be waiting for the flight to United States. So many of my friends, failed the first interview, and they never made. Some of them failed the medical checkup. And so I myself was fortunate enough to pass through every interview and medical checkup as well. And so coming to US was a process, and was not a one thing, event. So that's what I can say was fun.
Were you relocated under a resettling agreement, or did you have the opportunity to choose the United States?
After the whole process in the refugee camp, and when when I was actually, give my example, and other friends as well. When I got my results that I passed the interview and medical checkup, and I was ready to go to United States, so then I have to wait because the organizations here in the United States, for example, the CCS, Catholic Service Organization, that when they have the budget, then they will request the number of refugees that have already qualified to come to the United States. So they would have already a budget for a certain number of people. And so it was not my choice to, I didn't even know Utah. and the only place I knew had was the New York State, California, and so forth. So it was not my choice. It was the organizations that have budget and how many people they want to support.
Okay. So when you came here, you initially ended up in New York, is that correct?
Yes, I was, I came through the Catholic Charity, and they resettled me in New York, where I spent 9 months, and it was fun, and seeing so many stuff. So that's then, something that I was going to share as well.
I imagine that resettling to New York from anywhere in the United States would be difficult for an American. I imagine that it must have been much more difficult for you as a refugee.
Absolutely. When I, got to New York, of course, it was exciting, and with its own popularity all over, it was something that, yes, this is, I have been resettled in one of the best and popular, states in America. But although, that was something just in everybody's mind in Africa and in most of the countries in the world. But when I got there, of course, there were good things, and there were things that shocked me. And I was like, really? and so which I would like to discuss later on.
Okay.
Culture shock.
That sounds good. When you decided to move, how did you decide to move to Utah?
Well, I came to visit a friend of mine who, of course, when we got the opportunity to come to the United States, many of us were resettled in different states. And so one of my friends was resettled in Salt Lake City, and he asked me to come and visit. And so when I went to the Catholic charity, I told them I would like to go to Utah and visit my friend, and they were like, that's fine. So they sponsored actually my flights.
Oh, wonderful.
And so they did, the booking and everything, and they took me to the airport. And so I came to Salt Lake City. So then I came and found out it was one of the best states where I felt so comfortable and with the good, values that I see in people and how organized the society is really capture my heart. Since then, I never gone anywhere. I started loving Salt Lake City, like, this is my home. This is my second home. And everywhere I go, I talk about Salt Lake City, Utah as my home.
That's wonderful. So your life in Utah, it must have also been a culture shock, maybe not as much from New York, but can you talk about some of the things about your first thoughts with the state?
Yes, well, the culture shock started back when I arrived in New York.
Yeah.
Of course, seeing some of the things that I could not believe, like, for example, the dressing code, during summertime shocked me because, I came from a different culture where we are so, I don't know how I can describe it, but very protective or reserved, if I could use that word. And so I was shocked to see the different, things that were happening. And of course, I was able to go, to different, grocery stores and tested different food. Wow.
Is it good or bad?
Everything was cold and tastes different.
Uh-huh.
So I tried so much, but I did not have the appetite to eat, So, but if you were to take me to lunch or, take me to the dinner, you better buy me chicken wings because I really enjoyed chicken wings. Maybe because we have also chickens back in our village. So I was able to, really familiarize myself with that. And so, but also when I came to Salt Lake here, yes, the same culture shock were there, but I, of course, overcome some of things and able to adapt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. When you arrived in Salt Lake, did you have any mentors who helped you, or other refugees who were arriving?
Yeah, the first people that I actually encountered in Salt Lake City, coming from New York City, were the volunteers from the International Rescue Committee, IRC. I'm very appreciative of them, but maybe, I would say even when I was back in New York, I had a good, mentor who was from Syracuse University. She taught anthropology. She's a professor there, and she was able to connect and work with me and my friends on the culture side. And so was able to really, got some good things from her as well. And when I came to Utah, I was able then also, of course, met with those volunteers from IRC, and they advised me that I, focus on education because this country, is so much, opportunities, and I got motivated on that, and that's what really kept me going on that path.
Next, we're going to talk about the Sudanese community in Utah. Utah has a rough population of about 2,000 Sudanese members. Can you tell us about the South Sudanese community here in Utah?
Very good question. Thank you. If I may take you back, Sudanese community in Utah was the community that was there before the independent. And the population, yes, was roughly 2,000. And when we got our independent in 2011, that's when we got our South Sudanese community in Utah. And the number roughly remained the same because most of the refugees from the refugee camp were given opportunity to come to the United States because of the unique case that we were unknown of in the world. So our population probably, got the same or, increase or decrease because specifically in Utah, we had some of our members move to different states and some comes in, so there's a fluctuation on that. And so South Sudanese community in Utah is growing because we have a lot of families and, we have new members in the community, which we are very, hopeful that will grow and become good citizens of South Sudan in future. And so we are different tribes in Salt Lake, but covered by the country. So we have 65 tribes in South Sudan. Although many of them, most of them did not, never made to the United States. They ended up in different countries, Canada or, Australia. But most of the tribes in Salt Lake here, we have at least probably 10 to 15 different tribes. And so we are doing okay. We are, always try to, get together during the birthdays, during the big celebrations, during the weddings. And so we are doing okay, but not to avoid the challenges that we are encountering as the refugees in Salt Lake City from South Sudan. And given our background, most of our community members, we came from the villages direct to the refugee camp and to the United States. So when we got here, there were a lot of challenges. Probably it's one of the questions that I know you were going to ask me. So yes, there are a lot of refugees, from South Sudan here in Salt Lake.
What specific challenges do refugees from South Sudan and other African nations face that other refugees from around the world might not?
That's very good question. Thank you. The challenges are many. Number one is lack of education. We never have good educational background. And so when we got here, we were faced with that side, that problem, where we could not get good jobs compared to other refugees from other countries who came here with huge experiences and strong educational background. And so the other thing is the mental issues that South Sudanese refugees in Salt Lake City facing. Because of the situation that they went through, they are so traumatized. And therefore, and in our culture, we are shy to admit and say, I am feeling this and that. We end up just covering it up. but this became an issue in our community. The other is, of course, there is a high rate of divorce because, in our culture, men have to, control, the family, and so. But when we got here, there's what they call freedom, where women start, of course, say no on something that men say yes, they should be, informed or done to them by, when they are not accepting. So that's one of the challenges, and I could go on and on with the South Sudanese challenges, especially, for example, even the youth, because most of the, young kids, they are getting into trouble because of the problems in their families where there's, only mother. And when there is no father in the family, the kids start misbehaving or getting into drugs or getting into problems. And so, and it's very hard to really have mothers take care of such kind of challenges. And sometimes they do full-time jobs, and so they don't have time to know what the kids were doing when he or she is at, at work.
So it sounds like a lack of formal education coming from South Sudan is a challenge that maybe.
Yes, that's the main factor. That's the main factor because we don't have, any educational structure in South Sudan. We were brought up in the war, and we were just, never been given opportunity to go to school, since, the British, when, and Arabs, when they came to, to Sudan. And so that is something that we inherited, and we are still facing, these challenges to this time.
Okay, Dominic, next we have some personal questions about race and identity that we'd like to ask you, and we hope that this will help people better understand you and your perspective as an individual. First, how do you identify?
Leaving my village and ending up in a refugee camp, coming to the United States, I describe myself, although I'm now a U.S. citizen, I describe myself as a former refugee because I have the refugee experience, background, and that's how I describe myself because there was no any other experience that I went through, and it would be very, different if I could identify myself, in a different way. Of course, although, identity will never be changed.
Yeah. So with that, being a refugee and an immigrant, what does that look like? And have you ever been misnationalized, or have people made assumptions about whether or not you were an African American, or just assumed you were from somewhere else?
Yes, when I, got to this country and mingle with all different people from different, groups and backgrounds and ethnics and nationalities. Of course, a lot of people, they just think they ask me if I was from, Jamaica. And of course, I always reply to them in a very interesting and fun way that, yes, I'm from Africa, but of course, Jamaican historically were from Africa. And so I'm also Jamaican.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
I heard that at maybe one point you had dreadlocks.
Yes, of course.
Did that help create that?
Yes, a lot of American friends of mine. They, for some reasons, they believe, my accent, are Jamaican, and probably also, my dreadlocks probably play a big role on that as well.
Okay.
Because Jamaicans are known by dreadlocks and Rastafarian culture and beliefs, and so I think I don't blame the people that view me as Jamaican, because probably I had some of the similarities of Jamaicans, which was the dreadlocks and maybe the accent as well.
What would you say to those people to give them an opportunity to inform themselves?
You mean what, their own experience, or?
What would you say to them about making assumptions about where you are from?
Well, good question. I think it's a culture that it's already been developed, and so what I would probably just advise, people, it's all getting to know a person individually, rather than assuming, he or she is probably, from that place or this place, or he's probably, this or that. I mean, in terms of different perspective in life. And so I myself, I would just, say, yes, don't, don't, assume things, and that way we know each other very well.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
What does being black mean to you?
Being black is the power.
It's power.
Power. Historically, of course, we have witnesses, we have evidence in books and even in a biblical, Bibles, that the man was originated from Africa, and then moved to different parts of the world. And if you go to one of the islands in those many islands, for example, you go to New Guinea, you will find black people living there. And you then could ask yourself, how did they end up there? Probably many people will say through slavery, but I think we have more work to really do research on that. And so being black is power, and we are the foundation of humankind in this world. And so that's how I believe in being a black.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Could you describe your experience being black African male here in a state with only 1.4% of the population as African or African American?
Yes, as a black, African male in United States, specifically in Salt Lake City, my experience, of course, when I got here, was different. I was told if you walk downtown by yourself, people will call police for you. If you do something, you will be looked suspicious. And I don't blame, those people, because it's a culture that was already developed. And therefore it was scaring for me, because I thought, it was a free land where I can walk, anytime. And so, but things have changed. because when I got here, the percentage of black people was very, very small compared to now, where the population have gone just viral and very interesting. And I would like to discuss about why that.
Okay. So last October, the Trump administration drastically cut the number of refugees the United States would accept over the next year to 18,000 people, far less than the Obama administration's 110,000 people. Utah Governor Gary Herbert responded by writing a letter to President Trump asking for more refugees to be sent to Utah to resettle, saying that there's plenty of room and resources for those in need. Herbert said the history of Utah is a haven for refugees fleeing religious persecution and informs approaches to refugees that many Utahns empathize with, the plight of those that have been forced from their homes. He added that those who resettle in Utah become part of the communities and become productive workers and citizens. And with that, what advice would you give other African refugees looking to resettle in Utah?
Well, that's a good question. Number one, I would say on the other way around, that instead for me, as a refugee in Salt Lake City, to advise the newcomers that comes here on anything would not be of good help. That would not even make sense to me personally. Rather, I would advise the host community to help the refugees on, number one, how they can understand the laws in Salt Lake City, particularly, on how they can get education so they can become productive citizen and so they can contribute to our beautiful state, and also to follow the policies and the laws rather than just having them being on their own. Mm-hmm. So my take is to advise the host community, which I have always done in many occasions, to encourage the host community to be patient with the refugees in schools, because they come from different background, and probably sometimes they act differently, and that could be challenging. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I always, advise the host community to be patient with us and help us grow and do well in this country and in this state. So although I'm very impressed and I'm very proud of Salt Lake City and the church that have done a fantastic job in terms of really emphasizing and telling the members of the church to embrace the refugees as Jesus, embrace, the people on earth. Help love your neighbor as you love yourself. And Utah, as of now, is one of the best states that welcome and embrace and help and assist refugees compared to other states. And that's why when I got here, the number of the refugee was not that big. But now it is probably number one or number two states that welcome the refugees all over the whole world. And that's what I would say I echo, I support, I agree with our governor for what he have stated.
Well, so for me, what I got from that question is that really the responsibility falls on us to make sure that we are more welcoming and understanding.
Yes, absolutely. You are right on that. For example, if we could reverse the situation, and you come to my village, and I end up just leaving you, not showing you the direction where you can go and collect the water or go and collect anything that you need. How would you really feel? I do believe you will totally, sometimes you will be stressful, you will be frustrated, and you will end up, giving up. So what I would do, I'll instead help you, to show you the different directions, show you where you can collect the firewoods. I will show you where you can, get water. I will show you where, you can maybe cross the river, because if you don't know, sometimes then you can, get into a deep, river. And so it will be my responsibility to help you up so that you can be familiar with the situation and feel very welcoming and comfortable in my village. And so that's what I would do, and that's what I expect our host community here to do the same, to help us and help us grow.
I think that's an amazing and very important message. So if you're listening, the responsibility is on us to help welcome these refugees and help them settle in Utah. So what were the best resources for you when you got here?
It was networking, great people. For example, when I got I got in New York, I was able to know Professor Felicia, anthropology professor from Syracuse University, who came and helped us in maneuvering and try to help us in preserving our culture and not get carried away by so many new things that we found in New York, because it was not easy to forget. We could easily forget our culture due to what we found in New York. So many things. And so she was there to jump in and told us the importance of keeping our culture. And we were able to practice most of the time. And so those were some of the examples that I would say I got when I got here, and many others, people out there.
Okay. Next, we're going to talk about your South Sudanese cultural heritage preservation work. Dominic, you had the opportunity in 2017 to do some cultural preservation work. Recently, you went to Kakuma on behalf of the Association for Cultural Equity. And it's a nonprofit founded by the late musicologist and producer Alan Lomax, and now run by his daughter, Anna Lomax Wood, who is a close friend of yours. Could you tell us about this project?
Yes, thank you. Anna Lomax Wood is an association of cultural equity, have been great to me. And I first would like to thank Anna Lomax Wood so much for helping myself to go and help my tribe of Didinga community to preserve their culture. Without Anna Lomax's help, I would have not made what I have, made down there. So this South Sudanese cultural preservation was what I felt I need to do, apart from what I started doing in Salt Lake City here with the South Sudanese refugees. I was afraid in the refugee camp, there was a lot of stress. People were not happy, and therefore the culture was forgotten. And I was the person to go and tell them this is the very most important things that we cannot afford to lose. And therefore, because I did not really have, the resources, that's when Anna Lomax jumped in. She supported me in providing the professional cameras, and she hired professional photographer and cameraman to show me on how to operate the cameras and take the shots and doing all this that I did. And so she did a good job in helping me. And so I ended up going to the refugee camp in 2017 and talked to the people, the elders in the refugee camp, that I am here to protect and preserve and record our culture so that it doesn't disappear. And our people there in the refugee camp really welcomed the idea. They were very appreciative. They told me, we never thought one day there will be someone who will come all the way from United States to come and do this in this part of the world. And so I told them, I have not forgotten our culture, and that's what I come to do, and I would like you to help me do this. And so the community selected the committee, of 5 women and 5 men, where they mobilized the community, and we organized the traditional dances and singing and interviewing the people. And so it was such a motivating moment for the people, and really bringing them back to life. And that when they were singing the songs, they were able to remember some of their old days in the villages, the songs that they used to sing, and that make me cry. And I tell Anna that people thank you so much, and I'm also very happy, and this is something that I would keep doing and help other tribes of South Sudan as well.
So this is an ongoing project.
Yes, it's an ongoing project, and that's what I would really want to emphasize. It's an ongoing project because, number one, when you define the culture and tradition, it's not a stagnant thing. It's an ongoing thing where we have to practice and practice and practice and pass over to the next generation. And so that's what I'm working on, the things that I'm working on, which I would like to discuss later on.
Okay. Do you still need funds for this project, or is this something that...
Yes, this project is in my heart. And yes, I need funds so that I would continue doing the editing of the videos, doing the cataloging of the songs and stories of Didinga tribe, and really make sure they are well documented and preserved, so that the new generation will one day come and find and study and use for educational purposes.
Okay. Is there a way that people can help support you in this process?
Yes, one way we have a fundraising donation website that anybody who would like to help out on this journey will be highly appreciated.
Okay.
And we have, the website that you can donate specifically for the Didinga traditional cultural preservation.
And we will link that on our website. And then next we have a song that Dominic has documented that we are going to play for you.
Pai,
Tell us about the song that you documented and what is it used for?
In Didinga tradition, of music and, dances, we have different types of songs that people in a village compose. I will give you, for example, we have warrior songs, we have harvesting songs, we have love songs that composers compose in our village. And one of them that I would like to discuss that I documented when I went to the refugee camp in 2017 was one of the songs called Lohiroto. Lohiroto is the song that is being sung during the time when kids are misbehaving.
Yeah.
And when actually the kids are misbehaving, their parents will then say, hey, we are going to have Lohiroto to come. And so what the Lohiroto does, he scares the kids, and the kids they must run and climb the tree. And that's what really disciplines them in terms of understanding if they don't do anything, then they will be, affected or attacked by Lohiroto. And Lohiroto becomes a very, very significant part in our village because it disciplines the kids, when they try to misbehave. And that really applies to other songs as well. In our village, for example, also, apart from the kids being scared, there are some songs that also in the village being sung toward those whom does bad things in the community. For example, if you are lazy, people in the village will compose a song and they will sing that song describing you. And
Sounds
everybody
like a lot of
will
peer
know.
pressure.
Yes, and everybody will know, it's song for so and so. So that's the meaning of most of the songs in the village.
Okay, wonderful. I think we have a clip of the Lohiroto song and dance that we will play for you next.